Hello and welcome to the Ode to Cinema podcast. I'm joined again by Luke Crawford.
Hello.
And today we're going to be delving into Bong Joon-ho's Parasite. All right. So I just saw this last night. You saw it how long ago?
I want to say a week or so.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a little fresher in my mind maybe, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. It feels like a mix of a whole bunch of genres, which I feel like Bong Joon-ho tends to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels very heisty at the beginning,
Yeah,
at least. Like,
yeah. It has a lighter tone at the beginning and kind of lulls you into a false sense of security.
True. So just as a warning, there will be spoilers in this podcast. So if you have not seen it, go see it. I highly recommend it. And then you can come back and listen to this. If you're not too worried about spoilers, then go ahead and listen, because we will be talking spoilers. Yeah, so you're saying it definitely lulls you into a sense of security with its beginning being pretty lighthearted and fun for the most part, and then gets to a very dark spot toward the end.
Yeah. There's like I went in knowing nothing about it, and I was very grateful for that, because if I had known even a little bit, I don't think I would have been disappointed, but it's way better the first time seeing it without knowing anything.
Right. And I had been warned by so many different people to not see any trailers first.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of expected it to be a little more crazy than it ended up being.
Yeah, I kind of did too, but it still was off the rails.
Yeah, it was great. I wasn't sure. I was like, after the whole first act and everything, I was waiting for like the turning point when everything was gonna like go crazy. And I feel like that kind of happens right when the old housekeeper comes back.
Yeah.
Right when the family's gone, and then when she goes downstairs and you see her like pushing against the bookshelf, I was like, You're is like, happening?
What is
right
going
now?
on? And then there's just that moment where they open it and they're just running down deeper into the tunnels, and I was just sitting there going, what is happening? And it was so great.
Yeah. So yeah, and this film is the first film from Korea to win the Palme d'Or at Cannes Film Festival, which is pretty crazy. And the first to win with a unanimous vote since Blue is the Warmest Color in 2013, which is pretty crazy. Quite a bit of Oscar buzz around it as well.
Yeah, people are vouching for it to be Best Picture, not just Best International.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I'm excited. I hope it does well, because I think it definitely deserves it. And I don't know. I tend to lean. I love like East Asian film, specifically like Japan and Korea. Like one of my favorite films is Castaway on the Moon, which is a South Korean film as well. And then I really enjoyed the Along with the Gods movies, which are kind of more like blockbustery. And then also I watched Burning came out last year.
That's what I was thinking about.
Great.
That was really good.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. There's just a unique feel to a lot of Korean cinema. I feel like it has a more unique tone, especially, I don't know, sometimes it can feel very over the top. This doesn't feel as over the top as other stuff I've seen. I was actually kind of surprised by how grounded it was in the beginning, and kind of with the ending too. I thought it would go a lot more ludicrous toward the end, and I was kind of glad to see that, there were consequences to all their actions. And, it ends not in like a crazy way, but with kind of stagnantly and more reflective.
Yeah, cool. It kind of starts out where like they're doing all these things, and you're like, they're like forging documents and lying to these people and like telling people they have tuberculosis, and it doesn't feel like there are really any stakes, because it doesn't feel like anything wrong's going to happen. But then like later in the film, I mean, spoilers, but people die, people get arrested, and you can definitely feel that they did something wrong, and it hits you there where you're just like, wow, they got arrested and punished for what happened. And it doesn't really like feel like it at the beginning. It feels kind of like this lighthearted like fantasy movie in a way.
Right. It's definitely like a slippery slope, because the character Kevin at the beginning, I'll call him Kevin and Jessica are their names at the park house, because Kevin says at the beginning something about I don't see this as like forgery or something. I'm going to go here next year, and this is like how I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
So it starts out kind of like innocent, like he's just going to help tutor this girl to make some money and replace his friend so that, his friend can get with her eventually,
Yeah.
I guess. But then as they keep going, it starts to get more and more off the rails, and they start to delve more and more into illegal activity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of just dives into insanity a little bit.
Like they're rubbing the peach fuzz on the old housekeeper.
Right.
That's
Right.
insane.
And then, yeah, I love that. It actually, this film reminds me a little bit of, I don't know if you've seen Bad Genius.
I have.
Yeah. Just the heist factor and some of the stuff that goes on in there reminded me of Bad Genius a bit, which I also really enjoyed. But yeah, there are quite a few themes I kind of want to talk about with this. But obviously one of the big themes throughout is kind of the disparity between the wealthy and the poor, which Bong Joon-ho's films tend to have kind of like social messages, even though he says he doesn't intend for them to.
Yeah.
Because you have like The Host, which is kind of focused on the environment, Okja, which is focused on like food production and capitalism kind of, and then you have Snowpiercer, which is very, again, like social class, the rich and the poor. And he said he actually came up with this idea while working on Snowpiercer, I believe.
Yeah, you can definitely tell because it's like Snowpiercer is a very horizontal film, to where I remember seeing a lot of like interviews and him talking about this is very much like a vertical film, and how it's kind of like I don't know, different in that way.
What do you mean by that?
Like how in Snowpiercer, I'm not going to get into details because I know you haven't seen it, but it's very much about like a lower class is on the back of the train, and then it's like the further up you get, the more high class it is. And it's kind of like this film is the lower classes are at the very bottom, like in the basement, underground,
right.
Like the I think Kim family, is it?
Yeah, the Kim family is the poor family.
The Kim family is living in this kind of like half basement, first floor kind of place, and to get to the rich family house, you have to go up these long steps and walk up and up and up. Right.
Yeah. One of the kind of motifs throughout the film I was interested in was there's a lot of water throughout. There's like, there's them throwing the water on the guy outside their house.
Yeah.
In that slow motion scene, there's the flood that happens in the rain and the storm and everything. There's him putting the rock in the river towards the end. When I actually saw that shot with the water coming down the stairs and Kevin's looking at it, I thought that they were actually going to like flood out that basement or something. I thought it was kind of a foreshadowing, but it didn't end up being that. But so in an interview with Bong Joon-ho, I saw that he didn't really intend for there to be that much water, but then when they were filming it, it kind of like came out as a motif. And he said that, water always flows from top to bottom, and it flows from the rich to the poor, and that's the kind of tragedy of it all. So I don't know, there's this kind of theme of the poor being drowned.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that, because like now that you mention it, I do see that a lot, and I just didn't really think about that.
Yeah. I love the metaphor of that stone they get at the beginning too, which is supposed to be like bring them wealth, and Kevin feels like it's clinging to him. And
and it's also funny because like when he's leaving to go interview to be the English tutor, you could see the mom like washing the rock.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, she's like doing laundry and she's like washing the rock.
There you go. Yeah, and then it's what ends up like doing him in at the end is the rock, his own like desire for wealth is and he even says in the film like it's so metaphorical, which I find hilarious because it's just right on the nose. And then he ends up dumping it in the river later along with all the other rocks, which I think is a pretty powerful shot too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but one thing, there's that desire for wealth is definitely like plays a huge part in the film. And one thing that Bong Joon-ho said about it too is the really tragic part of the story is that the poor end up fighting one another, right? So you have
Mm-hmm.
uh, both clearly, the people in the basement who are trapped down there, living their lives and worshiping the rich above them. And then you have all the people whose jobs the Kim family ends up taking. They're really cutthroat in taking out all the other people so that they can have wealth. And you kind of realize that towards the end that they're all in this together, but they end up just destroying one another in the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the fight to be rich.
And there's that moment when they're in the gym with all the other people that have been displaced from the rain and the floods, and he's like talking about not making plans and how that like hits home that like these poorer classes aren't able to make these plans because I don't know, like he's always lived his life in a way that plans have never worked out for him, and it's so like disheartening to hear that. But then I think that makes the ending so much more beautiful, like the fact that his son is like, I'm gonna make this plan to be rich and come get you out of the house.
Right, but he says he's gonna do it like the right way, right? So it's not like this, and wealth kind of becomes this idea of like freedom and to be able to be with his family again. Because in the beginning they start as kind of one big happy family, and then this scheme they come up with ends up tearing them apart. Yeah. I love that shot too. When you see, I don't know, the vision of them owning the house and the father coming out of hiding, and the framing of that and everything is amazing. I love it. That's one thing that stood out to me big time.
Yeah, because it's so powerful because it's like it's actually there and you can see it and you can like visualize it just like him, and you want it to be real so badly.
Yeah. And one thing that's crazy to me, I didn't realize this until I did a little bit of research, but they actually built that house and they built the poorhouse, and they actually built the whole neighborhood around the poorhouse.
Yeah, I knew about the neighborhood that they built, where how they like flooded it all, but I didn't know. Did you say they built the rich house?
Yeah. So,
wow.
Which blows my mind because it's amazing.
It's like a character in and of itself.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense because if for the poor neighborhood, if you're going to need to flood a whole area, then obviously you're going to need to build it in like a water tank kind of thing. But yeah, that kind of blew my mind when I heard they built that rich house too. And it's like, man, what I wouldn't give to live there. Yeah.
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 I just love the, I don't know, like whenever they like come into the house, it's just like, it's so spacious, and then like the disparity between not disparity, but like the contrast between the wide open green spaces and light coming into the rich house, and then you go down to the Kim family house and it's just this cramped, like kind of grimy, they're all sitting on the floor.
Yeah, for sure. There's that shot too of when it's flooding and they're like grabbing their possessions, and the daughter Jessica is sitting on like the toilet and all the
like
sewage is coming out. And I think that happens at the same time that the old housekeeper is like throwing up in the toilet in the basement of the Park's house. So I thought that was really interesting.
That is interesting.
That I don't know. The film definitely has a very distinct rhythm to it. I feel like it plays out like, I don't know, the beginning felt a little slow to me because I could tell what was gonna happen. Obviously there are like these 4 jobs at the house and they're gonna be taken one by one.
I was kind of expecting like the mom or the dad to come in and not be very good at the job. And so because it's like the sister and the main character, they were all like so extremely good at what they did at like scamming, but also teaching English and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I kind of half expected the dad to be not a good driver or the mom to be a terrible housekeeper, but like they ended up being extremely exceptional at
Right.
all of their jobs,
Yeah,
even though they didn't get them in a traditional way.
that's another interesting point too. Is there's this they are skilled people and they're smart people, but they
Yeah,
just can't get a job. They can't get employment where they are
yeah,
from their position. Um, and I don't know. There's this line from Kevin when he's tutoring Daye for the first time. He says like, "What you need is vigor." You know, that's what matters the most when you're doing this test or whatever. And I see that
hmm,
like, and there's talk too about how the Park family being rich has made them too nice or too trusting, or
yeah,
kind, I think is the word they use. Um, but it's like, in order to make it from the bottom to the top, you have to be cutthroat. Whereas if you're at the top, it doesn't. You can be nice and not care and
yeah. And
whatever.
there's a moment that I specifically remember, where, like after they've like folded all of the pizza boxes,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like they open up the windows and like the insect fumigation is
Yeah,
coming in, and like the dad is just hammering out those
yeah,
boxes
I
and
love
not
that.
even paying attention to all the like fumes. But then after that they hand in the boxes and it's like, oh, half of these aren't even done correctly.
Yeah,
And it's like there's this shot where like she's standing in the middle of the frame, and then like slowly one by one, like each family member comes and like crowds around her, and they eventually like convince her to take the boxes and give someone a job.
mm-hmm.
It's like this really cool like image to show like this is a capable family
Yeah,
that just is able to get what they want or
right.
need just in non-traditional ways.
Yeah. Honestly, my thoughts too while watching the film was that I don't know. I was trying to come up with what was going to happen next after they had like all gotten the jobs at the park house. I'm
Yeah,
like, okay, well, at the park house, you have a mother, a father, a son, and a daughter. Are they going to like take over the lives of
that's what I was wondering.
the?
I thought
Yeah,
they were gonna like eventually like kill them or replace them in a way.
yeah, exactly. That's what I thought too. I'm like, I don't know how that would work, but it
Because
seems like that's what could happen.
I remember watching the trailer like pretty like a couple days after I saw the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like marketed or edited in like this kind of horror thriller way,
Right.
and it was like this isn't really what the movie
Yeah.
is. It's like only a fourth of the movie. It's what there's all this emotion there. There's comedy. It's really interesting how
Yeah.
it's like marketed towards like American audiences as this like creepy family drama like thriller thing. I
Yeah.
don't know.
And that's kind of what I expected too. I expected it to be a lot darker than it ended up
Hmm.
being. I mean, the ending gets pretty dark when there's all that
Yeah.
violence at the party, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, it was a lot more. And I feel like that I didn't quite connect with the characters as much as I should have in the Kim family because I was expecting them to be like totally evil and violent, which they didn't end up
Yeah.
being altogether.
Yeah.
I mean, they did a lot of illegal activity, but I don't know. I
But
didn't.
it was like charming in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's like I always expected like one of them to snap or like something to go wrong with them.
Hmm.
But they always somehow remained likable,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I mean, oh, man, one shot that stands out to me too is the one where the Mrs. Kim kicks the old housekeeper down the stairs. That's insane. And that too
That's
is another like example of how like they are willing to do anything to survive above the other,
yeah.
poor people.
And it's like the entrance into the basement is like this black abyss. And it's like when the kid is like at night, he's like going to get food, and you just see like the guy's head peek up out of the black.
Terrifying.
It's so terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. And too how he worships, Mr. Park is really interesting. And with the lights, he's like
Hmm.
sending him messages or turning on the lights as he walks up, and like I don't remember if he communicates things in Morse code before that point.
Yeah, he was like sending a Morse code about
Right.
like, oh, I love you,
Yeah.
I praise you.
Which is insane, but
Yeah.
that kind of gives us an image too of how we can idolize those who are in power or have wealth.
Hmm.
Um,
And like ultimately, those that are richer aren't always like kind, because he always talks about how like Mr. Kim has like that distinct smell
Right.
that
Yeah,
crosses the line.
and Mr. Park has no idea about this guy's in the basement, his existence, and yet he
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
idolizes Mr. Park. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, the smell is definitely like the thing, one of the themes throughout the movie, right? The Da Song, the son of the Park family, is able to smell like immediately. They
Yeah.
all smell the same.
It's like they smell the same, and Kevin and Jessica smell like that too.
Right, it's distinct enough for him to be able to tell. And then there's the Mr. Park talks about how when he's driving, he can smell it coming back in the car, like edging into his place. You know, he can sense the poorness kind of gripping at him, I guess.
Yeah. And it's kind of sad to think about. Like, even though this family has been like super nice and getting jobs and has been very kind to them, there's still like that like, I don't know, this disconnect where like they're rich and they have this like, I don't know, arrogance to them of like, oh, they smell weird, or
there's like a disdain or disgust or even like almost cluelessness. Like they don't even care about the poor. It's just like, oh, what is this smell? Yeah. Which is a crazy thing to focus on, is like the smell of the poor. But it's, it just shows like the littlest thing, you know, is what sets off Mr. Kim in the end, right? To stab him. Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering too. They have a lot of like Native American imagery and like talk about that with the Cub Scouts and things like that.
I thought about that too.
I'm just wondering if there's like something about you know, taking this other horribly treated culture and like appropriating it to yourself. I don't know if that was a message that was trying to be given across to you. Like they they end up dressing like the Native Americans at the party.
I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah, I haven't thought a lot about it either, but I think that there's something there. Yeah. One other line that stood out to me is when the party is happening and Kevin is with Daye in her room. He says like, do I fit in here, or something like that? Do you think I belong here? And he doesn't feel that way, and she doesn't really know how to respond to that. But
because they're it's like this last minute party is just so perfect. And they have like someone playing the cello and someone singing. It's so ridiculous, and it's like so strange to think about to him and to me. Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, he is there, he has gotten his place there, but he still feels like I don't truly belong here. I don't know, that just seemed interesting to me. He didn't really earn his place or like have the same personality as these people or the same privilege as these people, that he would never fit in with them. Yeah. That's most of what I have to talk about. I think just again, the blending of the genres. I love the humor. There's like just some quirky things throughout with I don't know, one of my favorite things was when he's looking at the portrait that the son has made and he's like, oh, it's a chimpanzee, and she's like, no, it's a self-portrait, and he's like, oh, I see. Cracked me up. There's just little moments throughout like that aren't like, you know, big jokes, but just little quirky humor that make you, I don't know, catch you off guard, that I loved. And then I think the suspense is so well done. There's always like another thread hanging that you're like, oh, but what about this thing that could go horribly wrong, or this thing?
And it's like the entire scene where like he goes out in the rain and camps, and they're like, let's just sleep on the couch. And you're like, ugh. It gets me every time.
And you got the people in the basement the whole time, and you got you know, the radio that goes off, and you got him crawling. Oh yeah, it's great. I love it. Any other thoughts from you?
I guess just like, I don't know, I just really liked how beautiful this film looked. There were just like moments where I was like, man, that looks really good. Like especially like in the house. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, again, if you haven't seen it, sorry for spoiling it for you, but still go see it.
Yes, please.
Let us know what your thoughts are in the comments below too. We'd love to hear more discussion on it and what your thoughts might be about some of these things we weren't so sure about, or maybe even some of the things we said that you disagree with. Well, we'll close it off there. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.